Hello and welcome to the 100th episode of the Stateside Soccer Show. I am Jordan Wigan. I've been here for all 100, and with me today is a man who is not, who joined us 17 episodes in, Logan Stump.
Okay, first of all, you actually technically you have been here for 100, but I do want to say it's like 99 and a half because I had to do the Houston episode last year by myself. So technically,
I did the
I know
intro and the
I
end.
should have recorded the intro. I don't know what I was thinking. I had a chance to just kind of, you know, take this winds out of your sail, but I guess those will be for later days.
Yeah, well, if you end up doing any while I'm gone, for the 2 days I'm
I'll
gone,
catch up.
yeah, you'll be able to start catching up. But yeah, episode 100. I can't believe we're here. Like I said, I'd done like 16 of these without you, and that was at the end of the 2020 season. And then 2021 season, you came on. We did like an intro to MLS episode. Then we start doing our previews, and throughout the whole year, it took us to I think like episode 80 something, and then we started doing the previews again, and it just pushes us to where we're doing like 3 or 4 of these a week, where we easily get to episode 100. But it is a milestone. We got here faster than we did Stoppage Time Soccer Show, which started before this show. This is actually probably the longest podcast I've ever done out of all of them. I don't think I've ever gotten to episode 100. I'm not sure about like Behind the Dreams. I don't think we did 100. We weren't as consistent. So I do want to thank you, Logan, because if you hadn't joined, this one probably would have fizzled out as well. But
it's been fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know the league. I was one of those fans, and you can kind of come at me if you want, but I was one of those fans that, like initially I looked at MLS, and I had started to kind of watch it in 2014 in between our college programs because I started watching Orlando City, knowing that I'd probably be back in Orlando. And I've never lived in a city with a professional team that I like, so I wanted to at least follow Orlando. So when I got back to Orlando, I knew, the players and stuff like that. But I just couldn't get into the league. I just didn't find it interesting or competitive enough. And you can get me for that, Jordan. But again, I didn't get to see Landon play in MLS. I didn't get to see some of the guys that you did. I grew up playing FIFA, and the only team that I really understood was the Sounders because we had Clint Dempsey playing for them. We had DeAndre Yedlin when he was a young kid. So playing with them was cool and kind of seeing that. But it really has been a lot of fun just getting to know this league and how fun it's been. And on, it's on a meteoric rise, I think, across the globe. You got a bunch of people from the UK, you got people from Europe, people from South America really starting to follow these clubs because a lot of their players are coming here. So I'm glad that you've let me come on and kind of crash the party, Jordan, a little bit late, but it's been a blast, and I know we've got quite a bit of following over the last year or so, and 100 episodes in, and I feel pretty good about where we're going.
Yeah, me too. We'll continue to do this for as long as we can. So here's to 100 more, which we'll probably hit within the next really year and so. I mean, with doing 34 weeks of these during the season pretty much, and then doing close to 30 previews. We're not going to, just to let people know too, we're probably not getting to every team before the season starts since it starts so early this year. We're going to try to do either some of these without a guest or whatever to get as many done as we can and try to get a guest during the early part of the season for that team. But we're trying. The Qatar World Cup has really thrown off everything. So that will we're going to try to get all these previews done, but that's something that boosts the episode number as well. So we could probably reach episode 200 within the next because we're also going to be doing World Cup coverage on here. So we probably will hit 200 by the beginning of next season, I would think.
That's going to be wild. Like
just close.
The thought of that, and because we have all the qualifying, we'll have kind of this competition they're playing in the summer with the U.S. men's national team. Usually we like to catch, there's a couple weeks here and there that we like to do 2 episodes with Stateside. So that'll be wild. Could you imagine?
It'd be pretty crazy. But today we will have a guest on. We're talking LAFC. Who do we have joining us today, Logan?
Yeah, so Gio Garcia is going to come over and join us. He covers LAFC and LA Galaxy over on LA Soccer Hub. And you can find his podcast. I was listening to it a little bit earlier. But yeah, covering all things. That's crazy to me because usually when we have LA fans on, El Tráfico is not what they cover. It's more about, one team or the other. So I think it'd be interesting to kind of get his perspective on the teams. And, I'm kind of interested to see if he supports one of them. I really am, just to see if he's got an alliance with one of them or if he really can just watch it as a neutral. But I feel like that'd be hard.
Yeah, you'd think that'd be hard. But yeah, we're going to talk some LAFC today. So looking forward to that. So let's go ahead and take a break. And we will welcome in our guest. If you are a fan of Star Wars and you are also a fan of me and Logan, you can listen to us on the Pod Awakens, recapping the Book of Boba Fett. We have recapped every single episode of the Book of Boba Fett, and with the finale premiering on Wednesday, the day you're probably listening to this episode, we will be recapping that before the weekend, and that episode will be up before the weekend, and you'll be able to listen to all of our thoughts on episode 7 of the Book of Boba Fett. Are you enjoying it so far, Logan?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like everything that that is touched by Lucasfilm or anything that's dealing with Lucasfilm, Star Wars, especially the TV shows, Favreau, Filoni, it's all gold, right? And I'm really enjoying the show. I'm enjoying season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett and the beginning of season 3 of The Mandalorian. Looking forward to all the things coming because it seems like we're headed down a really good path with these. And tomorrow's finale, I've seen some, at least some reviews, not any kind of spoilers, but some really good things said about what's coming up down the line. So I'm really excited about the episode tomorrow.
So check it out. You can follow that on Twitter at podawakens, facebook.com/podawakens, Instagram podawakens, linktree/podawakens, and you can find us somehow by searching on Spotify or Apple. Or again, just go to the link tree and find it there, but those will be in the show notes for this show as well. So thank you for that, and we'll welcome our guest in. And we are back from our break, and we have Gio Garcia, who covers both the LA Galaxy and LAFC. Hello, Gio. How are you today?
Hey, man. I'm doing good. Fellas, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk LAFC today with you guys.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit about, sorry, Jordan, I didn't mean to cut you off. We were talking a little bit about pre-show, your coverage of LAFC and the Galaxy. So we usually ask, where can people find your stuff? And this is a unique situation just because I think covering both teams, you get a unique perspective. And like we were talking before, I'm sure that the fans are getting a little upset with you on each side, depending on what you write. But can you kind of just let us know where people can find your stuff, and maybe the LA Galaxy fans can get mad at the LAFC stuff that you write and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, they can definitely check out LA Soccer Hub. It's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So it's obviously we talk about both LAFC and LA Galaxy. And it's cool. I love that the MLS is growing. I love that the MLS is growing. I love, we're talking about pre-chat. We have 2 teams is special. I feel lucky to be able to watch, Chicharito, Carlos Vela, Chicho Arango, Brian Rodriguez, and now Douglas Costa, who's coming to the other Galaxy. So it's an amazing time. And look, with the fans is part of it, man. I love it. They say what they say, but that's what sports is. So that to me, it doesn't bother me. Fans can say whatever they like. It is what it is, but I enjoy it as well. And I think that's part of being a fan. That's part of being, covering the 2 teams. And those are things that, I expected coming in. So I like it, and I'm excited to talk with you guys.
Yeah, so let's take a look at, like we said, we're going to be talking LAFC on this preview. And reflecting on 2021, a season when both LA teams missed the playoffs, but one could say maybe expected for LA Galaxy or more acceptable with how bad that they've, been recently. But for LAFC, who really had, I think, a lot of expectations heaped upon them because of their success since joining the league, missing the playoffs, I guess just reflecting on 2021 and what you think went wrong with LAFC that now led to, Bradley's contract running out, he leaves, and kind of this overhaul that LAFC find themselves in for the first time in their professional seasons.
Yeah, I think look, 2021, just in short, was a disappointing year for LAFC. You mentioned there's so many expectations for LAFC, coming into last year. You're talking about, hey, everybody had them. I think all the MLS guys had them as winning the MLS Cup. But to me, going into last year, I remembered I always felt that Sounders, and I still to this day, I feel like Sounders are the best team in the Western Conference, because they just shown it time again. And I've seen last year and the previous years LAFC struggle against the Seattle Sounders, and I never felt that going into the 2021 season that they were able to. They didn't add the pieces that you see them add in 2022, revamp the roster. And you started the year, Brian Rodriguez went on loan to Almeria, right? So they're without a DP to start the year. Then injuries happened. Carlos Vela was injured, and then Diego Rossi had an injury. So that also took part in them having a poor year. But then also, Bob Bradley also didn't do the job everybody expected him to do, whether it was on the players, the front office. There were so many different things that went wrong with LAFC, and you saw it. And I just feel like it was so unfortunate because they had the talent, but they didn't have Carlos Vela, a fully healthy Carlos Vela. They didn't have a healthy Diego Rossi. They didn't have the three DPs last season. Brian Rodriguez ended up coming back from loan because Almeida did not end up buying him. And then halfway through or towards the end of the season, Diego Rossi leaves to Fenerbahce. He goes on the loan again. So they were in this situation where they would have a DP back, and then the next DP would go, and then the roster, there was a lot of changes with the roster, with injuries and players wanting in or out. So there's so many different things, and it was unfortunate to happen because I didn't expect them to do so bad like the way they did last year. But that's what happens when I don't think you reinforce the roster. I feel like they should have brought more MLS type of experience players. They never had really a number one goalkeeper. Now that you do, everything that you're seeing that they've done in the 2022 offseason, I feel like they could have done that in the 2021 season. But look, they've learned from to me now, it seems that they learned from the mistakes from all the players that they brought in this offseason. The other bigger signings that they've brought into the front office, that to me tells me that they've learned. But yeah, if you look at 2021, it was a bad year. And with a bad year, I just didn't feel that Bob Bradley was going to come back and coach, whether he wanted to come back or they wanted him to come back and coach. I just felt that relationship with Bob Bradley and the fan base, had gone. Fans were split down the middle, like really, like you're the Bob in or Bob out crowd. And that's what happens in sports. That's what happens when you have these expectations. And look, when you live in LA, you play in LA, you have to have these high expectations. And when you don't meet those expectations, changes have to be met. Whether it was the head coach's job's fault, can you blame the injuries on Bob Bradley? I don't think so. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, the book had to stop somewhere, and I felt like Bob Bradley, like I said, whether it was his fault or not, he was going to have to take the blame for it. Now you see he's in a better situation. LAFC are also in a better situation. So I think both parties moved on amicably, and now it's moving on to the 2022 season.
I think it's always interesting whenever I'm looking at sports, and I don't I don't watch teams that are, or support teams that are in big markets, so I don't know what that's like. But I can always see where the LA pressure or the New York pressure, sometimes like Philly with the Eagles or the Sixers, they've always had a huge pushback on fans. But then you got clubs like this where, I mean, honestly, the closest things I think we have is, I think even if you were in the Cascadia or in LA, like you're going to get a lot of pushback from a lot of fans just because they expect, good soccer going forward. And ever since LAFC's been around, they've just seemed to always have success. And it kind of leads into, like you were talking about, alluding to it. Can you kind of just, Bob Bradley posted a 58, 34, and 32 record with the club. He won the team their first piece of silverware, 2019 Supporters Shield. They also go on to a final in the CONCACAF Champions League, and almost had the chance to win that as the first MLS team to do so. And playoff appearances, three of his 4 seasons at the helm. Like, is there a certain legacy that he's leaving behind? Were people so sour on the relationship that they're kind of just letting this pass as just another manager, or is he going to leave a lasting legacy for this club?
Yeah, I think his legacy. Look, he was sure winning the MLS Cup, and if he would have won the CONCACAF Champions League, which they were 20 minutes away from winning that, then it would have been sealed. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But what I look and what I saw Bob Bradley did for LAFC and has done, he built a foundation for them. He's built the foundation for LAFC. Coming from we look, for example, we see FC Cincinnati struggle. We see all these other clubs pop up and they don't have the right away success, right? Bob Bradley came in and had success in 2018, had success in 2019. Obviously, they fell short to the Seattle Sounders in 2019. Obviously, 2020 wasn't a great year for anybody, and then 2021. But I think what Bob Bradley left, it was a solid foundation for LAFC, and it was a great first 4 years for LAFC. Unfortunately, whether it was tactics or whatever, that didn't let them win those championships. He did build a winning mentality with this club. The only thing that he didn't get outside of the Supporters Shield is an MLS Cup, right? And if you're a fan of the MLS, if you're a supporter of the MLS, no matter what team you root for, MLS Cup is the cup to get, right? So outside of everything, if you don't go, which I think every coach is standard, but outside of that, right? We know he didn't win that, but I said outside of that, what he's done for LAFC, what he did to build this foundation, connect with fans, and be passionate with the players, and all these different things, and in the 4 years that he was here, I think I would say it was successful on that aspect. And building that foundation, that was successful. Now, winning MLS Cup, he didn't get to win an MLS Cup. So obviously, when you look at the trophies and stuff like that, the Supporter Shield, you give him the Supporter Shield, but not winning the MLS Cup when you had a team with Carlos Vela, Diego Rossi, Eduardo Tuesta, I think that definitely leaves a little bit, you kind of scratch your head because you had the talent, but for whatever the case, they weren't able to get it done. But when I look at what the job that Bob Bradley did, I think he did a pretty solid job on the aspect of building the foundation for LAFC.
So Bob leaves, and they bring in Steve Cherundolo, which not sure if it was their first choice. It sounds like it wasn't originally, but it's going to be his first year as a manager of a top, like a top side, top tier team. He was for the Las Vegas Lights for a bit last year in the USL. He's also done some, he was a U.S. men's national team player. He's also done some youth things for like Hannover 96 over in Germany. But from what I remember, he was very hyped up as like a really good manager from when he was over in Hanover and stuff and working with the youth. But, people point at the Las Vegas records and say that he didn't do too hot there. But do you think this was a good move for LAFC? And do you think he'll have time to actually kind of make his imprint on the team, or are LAFC fans, maybe, 4 years into this, like you said, without an MLS Cup, or are they going to start maybe, like how bad does it have to be for him to get, fired through LA?
Well, I think first of anything, you got to give him a shot, right? I just think a lot of LAFC fans are very passionate, right? Everybody's familiar with the 3252, right? When you have such a emotional, supportive fan base, there also comes with criticism, right? There was at the end of the year, there was a couple people with the Bob out sign at the 3252, and this is a newer fan base, but I think there's certain things like that should be expected when you have such a passionate fan base with that. On the Steve Cherundolo part, I think it was a little head scratching because it wasn't a move right away. Because it took about a month and a half. We were talking about it. There was other names being around because typically when you hire internally, from what we've seen, he's typically like the front runner. The decision's made a lot sooner, and I think the reason why it was head scratching because it took so long, and then it kind of fell, or it feels like, hey, he was either the last option, or whether the front office seems, it did not appear that way, right? But now that he's the guy, I've been telling this to give him a shot. Let's see what he can do. I know his record did not look good. I think he was an assistant down in Germany. He learned a lot, everything in Germany. what I've seen so far, I really look at body language, right? So I see Carlos Vela is happier in the photos. I saw the first 45 minutes in the preseason game, I think against the Revs. It looks like it was a 4-3-3 formation. So we couldn't really see anything out of 45 minutes because that's when the first time the first team played, but there was no Kellen Acosta, Elias Sanchez, Max Kerpo wasn't playing. So you really didn't get a feel for the team. But to me, I want to see how he does. But let's get something straight. If he doesn't succeed right away, I can tell you that LAFC fans are going to be pretty passionate and they're going to voice their opinions because this was, in the beginning, people will remember this could be a head scratching. I feel like this could be a high risk, high reward situation. But from everything that I'm seeing in the body language of the players, they look comfortable. He's a player's coach. It's a different voice that they're hearing opposed to Bob Bradley, my way or the highway type of way, right? He seems more like I said, like a player's coach, more relaxed. He has his own way of doing things, and I feel like a lot of those players really needed that, and they needed that fresh breath of air and needed all that. Now it's just time to see. They've gotten all the right pieces, most of all the right pieces. LAFC. Now we just got to see how it turns out in the regular season.
Yeah, I was listening to a couple of his press conferences, and like you said, it is very much like Bob Bradley was the commander, and the rest of them just listened to what he said. Whereas there's been a big uptick in, I think, the attitude around the club that even with some of the, because they've got a nice mix of really young kids coming through, and they want them to perform well. And the days of Bob Bradley and Bruce Arena, I think, are coming to an end. Like I do think while they are good coaches, I do think that their time is limited in this league just because I do think there's a lot of that. There's a lot. If you can't be a player's coach, there might not be a chance for you to coach in MLS or in the leagues at all, because I think that we are starting to see if you're not a player's coach, you don't recruit, you don't get the players you want, you don't get the top success that you want. And if you look at it, I mean, it does seem like that's flying through the ranks is getting some of these younger players or coaches that were once players that are younger coaches and getting them through the system. I think about U.S. men's national team all the time because we cover that, and it's like Greg Berhalter, while people will continue to beat the desk about how much they don't like his style, at least one thing, he does recruit well because he is connected to the players, I think. And I think that's huge for Steve because I think him coming to LAFC, he's got to connect the guys like Carlos Vela, right? So I think that, connecting to these young guys. And I mean, would you say that his style of coaching is going to kind of take some form of what Bob did? Like, is he going to use a lot of the remnants from the club, or is he going to kind of change up and play his own style with LAFC?
Well, honestly, that's what I was interested in seeing.
Yeah.
The game is against the Revs. Like I said, it's a preseason game, but it appeared it was a 4-3-3 formation, right? And it's only one preseason game, and that's probably the only preseason game that any of us are going to be able to see from the media. I know they have something in Coachella, Palm Springs area, but I don't think many people are going to go. So we're not going to really see the actual first ideally lineup until the Colorado Rapids game on opening day. But what I'm very interested in seeing on Steve Cherundolo is how does the formation, right? Does he switch it up, or what does he do in the 60th minute, 70th minute when they say they're down 1-0 or whatever? That's more I'm more looking at, because sometimes I would say Bob Bradley did lack sometimes in subbing and tactically making those adjustments. I think that's where, and all the great things Bob Bradley did, sometimes the substitutions in critical areas, that's where sometimes his Achilles heel was, because he had certain tactics, right? But I think it was some of the subs. But that's why, like I said, that's what I want to see more on Steve Cherundolo. What does he do? Does he switch up the formation if they're up a man or down a man? I want to see how he is tactically. Obviously, I know where he came from Germany. He has a history, but like, I don't think his record with the lights will matter unless Steve Cherundolo does not perform. If Steve Cherundolo and the LAFC did not perform and they have a similar season to last year, then his record will be brought up. But if he has early success, similar success, and you have a pathway to go deep in the playoffs, I don't think people will bring that up.
So a huge addition that they made last year, just kind of transitioning, Chicho Arango, arguably could be an MVP candidate with the numbers that he put up last season. They were incredible. 14 goals, 2 assists in 17 matches played. Came over in August, and he had that big of an impact. I mean, they started to make little bit of a run and tried to force themselves up into a playoff spot, but couldn't quite get there with some of the draws and some of the losses from earlier in the season with how much they struggled. But can you kind of speak to his importance, and then can he have an MVP caliber year in 2022 next to Carlos Vela, who was once previously an MVP himself?
I definitely do see Chicho there, not just having an MVP year, but it kind of seems like the tide is turning that he may be the leader in the locker room. They're posting about him more on LAFC's social media page, Instagram page. He's talking about winning a championship, right? That's what you want to see from your leader. But if it wasn't for Chicho last season, LAFC would have had a worse season, because he was able to, score goals, essentially put the team on his back consistently, game in and game out, every time he put on the jersey for LAFC. So, and then the guys, everybody wants to play with him. Everybody wants to hang around Chicho. He just has, he has a Colombian swagger. He's cool, he's calm, collected, but he also goes out and performs, you know what I'm saying? And that's what you want from a player like that. And so far, like him and Carlos Vela, even though Chicho was getting more of the attention last year, it doesn't seem like it's an issue. Chicho's he's more vocal. He'll talk to the media. One thing I learned about Chicho, he would talk to the media after they lost or won every single game, and you don't really see that from Carlos Vela. You don't really see that, unfortunately, with the MLS stars for whatever reason. I come from covering NBA and stuff like that, and the top level players are always talking after every game. You hear Tom Brady and NFL talk whether they win or lose, but in MLS that's not the case. But the thing with Chicho, he was willing to talk after every game, and I think that speaks volumes, because the last season, Vela wasn't there. People didn't know if he was going to come back, so there was a lot of questions. But don't get it wrong, Chicho, I think this will be his team for the future, depending what happens with Carlos Vela. But yes, I do feel like he can have an MVP year. Now that they got Kelna Costa, we saw what he can do, with the set pieces, right? He's going to be feeding the ball to Chicho. He's going to, feed into Chicho, Carlos Vela, or anything like that. And I don't really get a sense from Chicho that he has to be the guy, because he still understands that this is Carlos Vela's team. But I also see that Carlos Vela it doesn't bother him that Chicho gets some of the praise, because he's putting in the work, So I'm very excited to see what type of year Chicho is able to have, because look, because of the short amount of time he had with LAFC, he got called up to the Colombian national team, right? But unfortunately, he wasn't able to play because he got COVID. So he's doing a lot of the great things that people around the league, around the world, are noticing what Chicho is doing. So I definitely do feel like this could be Chicho's coming out party this 2022 season.
You've mentioned Vela MVP in 2019. Since then, playing 27 of the 54 matches in MLS the past 2 years. Do you think it's possible for us to even see 2019 Carlos Vela again, or are those years gone? And how much longer do you see him with, LAFC, and what he can bring to the team this year?
The Vela thing is very interesting, because last year it just didn't seem like he was what appeared, he wasn't motivated, right, to play for LAFC. He wasn't at the El Tráfico games. There was reports that there was whether he didn't get along with the front office or coaching or whatever the issues was, right? It didn't help when you're losing, right? You know what cures everything? Winning, right? If they're winning, Vela's gonna stay. If they're winning, Vela's gonna score goals. If they're winning, Vela's gonna be at all the games and support his team and stuff like that. But if they don't win, it's unfortunate. One thing I noticed about Vela, when it was tough last year, he didn't really step up like you expected a leader to step up, which was kind of weird, because he was the leader. But I don't know if he was debating whether he wanted to come back or something else was bothering him that we don't know. But if Vela is able to stay healthy, that's a big if, right? We know what he can do when he performs. But I think it comes to me, it's going to come down to this year. Like, we can't keep talking about Vela. Oh, if Vela is healthy, he's the best player in the league, right? No, you got to be the best player in the league, and you also got to be healthy. That's just the way it works. I'm sorry, I don't know. That's how typically it is, right? Michael Jordan was always healthy for whatever reason. I'm assuming he had injuries and stuff like that. But I think if Carlos Vela is able to stay healthy, 2019, I forgot how many goals, over 30 something goals. I know he broke the record. You're talking about MVP caliber season. I'm very interested how it all works, because if Chicho's going to be scoring the goals, Vela's going to be scoring the goals, someone has to be doing the assistant. Or if Vela doesn't mind doing the assistant, the Chicho, right? So he doesn't have to carry the workload like how he did in 2019. because he has Chicho, he has Kellen Acosta also to help him out, and Brian Rodriguez had a solid year last year when he came back from Almeria. So I think he is very capable of doing that again. But I don't know how hungry he really is, right? In the season, look, whenever you compete, you're going to compete. But I don't know how hungry he is to want to break that individual record. I think what his focus maybe is to actually win a trophy, and I think he would sacrifice winning an MVP or the Golden Boot race to actually win a championship this year.
I think what's interesting too is with Vela, he's spoken about how he doesn't like watch soccer. Like he's more of a NBA fan. So I do think it, motivation of, this isn't seemingly a sport he really loves. It's just a sport he was good at, I think is what he said before. So it is interesting to think about it that way too.
I always thought it was weird too, like and I know he had gotten a lot of shots for El Tree, and there was that mentions of him possibly getting into the side there. But again, it like you said, I think it was just it wasn't the right time for him, and then the injuries happened, and it just wasn't a fair shake for Carlos. But I think that has to be demoralizing for him. Like it had to be absolutely. I mean, he goes from 2019 where it was like groundbreaking to 2020. He's hurt, and the pandemic happened. Like you said, nobody had a good year in 2020. Then he comes back 2021, and right out of the gate, he gets pulled when Bob thought that he kind of came up lame, and he kind of did, and then you don't see him for a while, and then he's had some injury issues continuing on. It didn't feel fair for him, and he might not have loved the game of soccer anymore. Like he might really not because of all the things that happened.
Honestly, that was with a lot of like exactly what you guys talked about, the basketball, being his favorite sport. A lot of fans were very vocal and very upset when he wasn't showing up to El Tráfico when you could at least be there. You know what I'm saying? You're not, and I think that's where that's where I was kind of like, okay, that's why everybody was, looking at Chicho. This is going to be potentially Chicho's team or whatever. But it's like, that's why I'm just curious how motivated he is. And you're right, probably the injuries and stuff. That's not fair to Vela, right? Of what happened, but unfortunately that's what happens. But I think one thing Vela can definitely control is how hungry he is, how motivated is he going to want to play? Because if not, then this team is only going to go so far. But I think him coming back and him signing, whether it's for 6 months or a year, I don't think we know the exact details with LAFC for this season, shows that he wants to give it another go and really try to win a championship. And if for whatever reason that doesn't happen, I think he's going to move on. And wherever if he decides to continue playing or not, I think he's going to be all right. But I think he definitely wants to give it a go and try to see what this LAFC team could do this year.
Yeah, and with him go the rest of the guys that seem to have been somewhat of a staple for this team. I mean, there's guys constantly leaving. This roster seems to be in a completely flipped over version of what it was in 2019. Like it's starting to really, like you said, it's starting to become somebody else's team. And I think they've done a really nice job this offseason, but we'll get to that. I do want to talk about some of the departures just real quickly. Raheem Edwards, Edward Atuesta, Tristan Blackman, and Diego Rossi, who was pretty much gone last year towards the latter half of the season. But can you kind of just speak to how they're going to replace? I mean, all of those guys did rack up, 1,000+ minutes. While they might not have had great seasons, and I think Edward Atuesta is a good player. Like I think that's somebody obviously they'll miss a ton. But can you kind of just speak to their absences and what they'll be missing from them?
Yeah, I think we'll start at Tuesta. Obviously, look, this team, I think Eduardo Tuesta for so long was the more important piece out of Carlos Vela. We know Carlos Vela scores. He gets the limelight. But what Eduardo Tuesta did in the midfield, they call him El Profe, right? The professor in the midfield. And you would just see him and saw what he did and how he was able to place the ball, give the ball perfectly to whether it was Carlos Vela or it was Diego Rossi at the time when he was carrying the team in 2020. But I also think Eduardo Tuesta was ready to move on, just like Diego Rossi, because before the start of the season, of the 2021 season, Palmeiras was really interested in bringing on Eduardo Tuesta and LAFC. And I don't know if what exactly happened, but I got wind that LAFC did it, or they couldn't come to agreement to the numbers or whatever the case was. So he was already, I think, ready to move on because he did become what was it, 2019 or 2020 or 2019 he did become was the best midfielder in the league, right? So I think that
Mhm.
was one of his biggest goals, to become the best midfielder in MLS, and I think he accomplished that. Obviously, what they didn't accomplish was the trophy, right? Obviously, 2020 happened, and 2021. I think 2021 being 4 years with the club, you want to take the next step if you want to end up going to Europe, right? So it's unfortunate that it happened. He didn't get it at the end of the season, and he didn't get the farewell. But I know he was very excited to go to Palmeiras and play with Palmeiras, and take his game to the next level. Because look, it is a World Cup here. He does has aspirations to go to Europe. So he unfortunately LAC has struggled a little bit from going from players coming from South America to LA to Europe. And I think Eduardo Tuesta was ready to move on and close this chapter with LAFC. I felt like he had a successful chapter with the LAFC, and I think he was ready to make that step. And I think at the end of the season, him and LAFC had the conversation because he did resign until this upcoming year. But I think he saw the opportunity that Palmeiras was interested in him, and he said, "Hey, I got to go." And it was his time to go. It's not. I don't think it was nothing that like people were upset or anything like that. He did his job. Now you got Ilya Sanchez and Kellen Acosta, and I think those two guys are going to be able to help what Eduardo Tuesta did. Right? We see what Kellen Acosta does with the U.S. men's national team. We saw what he did with the Rapids. We assume he can do that too. Ilya Sanchez, he has a solid background, so you're getting MLS caliber players that understand the positions in the midfield, and I think they're going to be able to help out there. Diego Rossi. Diego Rossi was just ready to go. He was ready to go to Europe. He wanted to go to Europe really bad. I think after the 2020 season, he built the confidence. He got the golden boot. Unfortunately, it was the pandemic at the end of 2020 year, so there wasn't that many suitors. But now he's at Fenerbahce, and it's getting a little tricky with Diego Rossi because the Fenerbahce hasn't triggered the clause to buy him. So I think
Mhm.
there's still questions there. There's a potential that he could come back, but to me, I think Diego Rossi is the same Eduardo Tuesta. He conquered MLS. He did what he was supposed to do outside of winning an MLS Cup. But I don't see Diego Rossi coming back. Because you got Ismail Shardy from NYCNC. You got Mahala. You have Brian Rodriguez. Those are just three wingers, and I don't know where Diego Rossi would fit in that. Or you would have to either bench Chicho or Brian Rodriguez if he did come back. It gets a little tricky, but I think Diego Rossi has closed that chapter of LAFC. He's moved on. So we have to see because he's on loan and they haven't bought him. So I think that's what gets tricky there. Tristan Blackman, I think he got picked up by what was it NY or Charlotte and then sent off to the Whitecaps, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the super draft. So that's unfortunate for Tristan Blackman. He did have a solid 2020 CONCACAF Champions League, but unfortunately for them, that was it. I thought he was going to be the starting right back, but they went elsewhere. And for Raheem Edwards, he's staying in LA. He's playing for the LA Galaxy. So I don't think too many fans are going to be upset that Raheem Edwards is leaving because he was more he was more used as a utility player. He'd play some forward, he plays some midfield. Now he looks like he has a great opportunity. But outside of those two, I think Tristan Blackman and Raheem Edwards, I don't think people will be too upset. I just think for Diego Rossi and Eduardo Tuesta, it was a time to move on.
Okay, so defensively, LAFC could have done better. It seems like you mentioned earlier, they never really had that world class goalkeeper previously. Do you think now with getting that keeper that they are set defensively, or is there anything else that they really need to plug in here before 2022 starts for any sort of defensive cohesiveness?
I think having Max Crepeau, apologize if I butcher his name, but he's been, you get a solid goalkeeper, and LAC has had so much turnover in the goalkeeper position. Now to finally get a true number one and know he's going to be the guy day in and day out, and he's proven it here. That solves. I think that was the biggest signing for me this offseason for LAFC because they struggled at that position. But seeing the first preseason game, um, Jesus Murillo he got a red card in the preseason game. He touched the ball with his hand. It was I think it was done. It was obviously done on purpose because he got a red card. But I think the trust behind Jesus Murillo is a little shaky, I would say, because he did cost the team a couple goals last season, and you're seeing it now in the preseason game, which you don't want to see that from a veteran center back player. So I think, by no means do I think you need to take him off the team, but I just don't really see him as a starter because he has so many inconsistency. And you have Mamadou Fall, you have Eddie Segura, who Steve Cherno talked about. He's ahead of schedule, but like he's not ready just yet. So game time. So I think they do need another. They do got Ibiaga. I believe he came from NYCFC. But I do think they do need another center back because of the depth, because of Eddie not being ready. You do have Mamadou Fall, but I think he's still a little green. But I think they need to add another center back piece.
Do they sit on another DP spot, or they've used all theirs?
No, so they still have a DP spot because Diego Rossi is on loan with Fenerbahce, but it's tricky. I don't think they're going to get another DP until the Diego Rossi situation is taken care of, or whatever, because there's rumors of him going to a Brazilian club, I think Flamengo. So it gets tricky because you're not going to want to bring in they're kind of handicapped because I don't think they're going to want to bring in a DP when your other DP hasn't been sold yet, And it gets
don't want a Miami situation.
Exactly. You're gonna have like 4 or 5 DPs, right? but I think for them it's tricky because look, the season's about to start in like what, 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks or whatever.
Crazy, yeah.
So it's coming here pretty quick, and look, 2 weeks is still enough time for whoever the third potential DP could come in. But if they don't resolve this Diego Rossi situation right away, then you're going to have a DP come during the season and during the summertime. And typically you want to have ideally you'd like to have all your DPs together at the start of the season, build a camaraderie, build a continuity. And I think when someone comes in halfway through the season, I don't know, it gets tricky. I don't know how far you could potentially go. And look, and we could be talking, look, we've seen teams that don't really have any DPs, only have one DP or two DPs in MLS. But I think they have one roster spot that they could be using, and they're not, is because of the loan. And I just think it's tricky when you start loaning out DP players because we've seen with the LAFC, it's not a for sure thing, even with Brian Rodriguez, the last season, and now Diego Rossi, that he hasn't been. But I thought he would have been bought by now, but Fenerbahce is going through their own issues. I think they let go of their head coach, and there's so many different things. So they're in this weird situation. So they said they were going to get another DP, but until Diego Rossi is sold or he's moved on, I don't see that happening.
So besides Toronto FC having a stellar offseason, I thought LAFC, if you look at on paper, they had probably one of the best off seasons, just because I think the experience that they're adding, the MLS experience, is key. And like you've talked about Kelenikovsky, you talked about Maxime Crepeau. But we haven't talked about Franco Escobar. You kind of alluded to Tajuri Shradi from trading from Charlotte after all the chaos with the expansion draft. These are great signings, right? I mean, I feel like fans should be absolutely thrilled, and especially with the way that Kellen Acosta has come on. He's literally bursted onto the scene in the last couple of weeks here, and played extremely well for the U.S. men's national team, and could have a huge part playing going forward. So can you kind of just speak to what I think is personally probably like an A or A plus as far as the offseason is concerned?
No, look, let's get something right. LAFC has had a successful offseason, even though it started a little slow with the head coaching decision. But look, I forgot to mention Franco Escobar. I saw 45 minutes from him, and I saw how versatile he can be on the right wing, up and down, give crosses in. So I think they're definitely going to nail the right back position. I feel like they've had a successful offseason. And not just, like I said, every player that you just mentioned, they have more depth, they have more experience. They're more mature team that they were last year. It's not all these USL players coming in and being the depth pieces that were for them last season. Now fans are excited of every single move that they've made, because those are the moves that needed to be done, and those are the moves that had to be done, And now you look at this LAFC team, and you recognize the names around the league, right? You recognize that these guys have put in the work around the league, right? They got a former MLS Cup champion, and Ismail Shardy from last season, right? And then you mentioned Franco Escobar. He played at Atlanta United, and I think he was coming from Argentina. Elias Sanchez, Kellen Acosta, who's had a successful. He looks like he's probably going to go to the World Cup, and his set pieces are amazing. So yeah, I would say it's successful, but not just that. They also added an offseason or a front office piece and Marco Antonio Garces. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he's the one. He was with Pachuca. He helped get Chucky Lozano to Europe. He had Hector Herrera. So a lot of national, Mexican national team players that I have made the jump from the Mexican league over to Europe. That's been another additional piece, and I think that's another piece that will help LAFC. The Brian Rodriguez, the Chiqui Palacios, or Jose Cifuentes that want to make that leap to Europe. And Marco Antonio has these connections, has a proven track record that he's done it. And I think I would say that would be the second biggest offseason move, obviously in the front office, because it shows like, hey, the front office needed help, and they brought in the help right there. And I think that, look, his work is not going to be shown right away. Look, because to develop a player to go to Europe takes some time. But look, if Brian Rodriguez was ready right now, whoever was ready right now, he has the connections to get it done. And I think that's going to build a better foundation for LAFC for getting players, whether they get them from South America or whatever, to make that leap to Europe.
Jordan, I'm going to jump in real quick just to can you kind of, like, you spoke about it and it's kind of off topic a little bit, but like there is a partnership coming. There is the chance that Liga MX and MLS have these partnerships going forward. They talked about tournaments. They talked about some of these cups that they're going to start playing in with each other. And I know that you've kind of followed the league. Like, are you shocked that LA? I mean, it seems like LAFC, LA Galaxy, like the teams on the West Coast would really look at Liga MX and go, you know what? I think that there's interesting pieces at Leon or Cruz Azul, and plucking some of their, not some of their players, but maybe some of the front office talent or coaches. Are we starting to see, or are you starting to kind of hear rumblings of maybe that is the case, that they are starting to look and kind of delve into that pot of, like, there's some Mexican young coaches that we really want to look at as to kind of bring up here in the MLS, because it does seem like that partnership is strengthening with the MLS on the rise and Liga MX being as good as it always has been.
Well, yeah, like I just mentioned, Marco Antonio Garces, he and his in the video that LAFC put out, he said in his words, they were like, I knew MLS is the next big thing, and he's like, I knew I was gonna. He talked about that. He knew he was gonna come to the MLS eventually, because he knew it was the next best thing, and I think that's already happening. And there was some rumblings that there was a couple Liga MX coaches that could have been in the front running for the LAFC job. For whatever reason, that ended up happening. But I think the MLS is very attractive to a lot of people down in Mexico. Obviously players, obviously coaches, and now you're seeing the front office. Even Dennis DeClose, who was the former GM or GM sporting director for the LA Galaxy. He was president. I forgot he was with the Mexican national team. So I think you're already starting to see that, and that's actually happening. And also, I think about the MLS, you're also starting to see players that are instantly making the move to Europe. Right? You have Weston McKennie's, you have the Christian Pulisic, but you also see guys like Pepe. You know what I'm saying? Right. Guys like that they're going right away. Someone who follows the Mexican national team and sees how the U.S. is able to develop and send those players right away. I think players, coaches are looking down in Mexico, be like, hey, I would like to be part of that. Hey, it's definitely going, because we saw the All-Star game here in L.A. I was able to be part of that. Pepe won it, but you saw that. Yeah, you can talk about the CONCACAF Champions League, but I don't think there's that big of a difference. Yeah, if you're playing FC Cincinnati against Club America, there's going to be a big difference. Let's not get it wrong, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But if you're talking an LAFC and LA Galaxy and NYCFC against Club America or Chivas, the competition's going to be there. It's literally going to be by a fraction, or whether it's an offside or something like that. The competition level is there, and I think for me, I would like to see more preseason games with like Club America or Chivas or something like that. I know they're going to have the tournament, I think after in 2 years, or where, I forgot what the tournament.
2023.
2023. Yeah. What's the tournament called? I forgot, because both leagues are stopping in both
Leagues Cup.
Leagues Cup. That's right. So yeah, I mean, I can't wait for that, because everybody gets a fair shot at that. Both leagues are stopping, and you get to really see. And by then, you're going to really see how strong both both of these leagues really are. I don't know if we're ever going to have one big league, but I think Leagues Club is as close as we're going to get.
So, expectations for this. This is my favorite question to ask guests. What would make 2022 a successful season for LAFC, especially with, a first-year manager? Is it just an improvement off last year? Is it making the playoffs? Is it a deep run? Like, what is a successful season for LAFC this year?
Look, I don't speak in behalf of the fans, but I think it definitely has to be something like a deep run. I don't know, it's kind of hard because I haven't really seen how Sharonda is able to coach. I haven't seen how how it is. Like I said, if he's down 1 or 2, he's down a man, and seen those things. But I think the fans, you look at this team, right? You got Carlos Vela, you got Chicho Arango, you brought Brian Rodriguez, you got Kellen Acosta, Max Capro. You look at that team and anywhere around the league, and you can be like, okay, this team has the capability of going deep because of the names I just mentioned, right? RSL does not have that type of team, right? And they made a deep run. You know what I'm saying? So that's the way I look at it. For clubs like RSL, which I know it's 1 in a million chances or whatever of that happening, and things have to play, and credit to RSL for being strong and the way they played. But if the names that I mentioned, regardless of who's the coach, you have to be able to make a deep run. And I think that should be the minimum. I don't know if that's MLS Cup, right? Because it's hard to say in a first year coach to take you there. And I don't know how Steve's coaching. Maybe come back to me in like 2 months or something like that, 3 months, where I actually have a deeper understanding. But yeah, I would say definitely a deep run. I think if you're a team that plays in LA, if you're LAFC or LA Galaxy, like the expectation should be minimum. It should always be the playoffs. I don't think the LAFC and LA Galaxy should ever be messing the playoffs with the type of players they're able to bring in, the type of coaches they're able to attract, and playing also in a big market.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on, Gio. Where can people find your stuff again?
Yeah, man. Thank you. LA Soccer Hub. So you can check me out, LA Soccer Hub. We have a podcast, so we talk about both teams. We even it up. We have guests, reporters. We have fans sometimes. Yeah, and then if you guys want to follow me personally, you check me out, Gio Garcia LA on Twitter.
And we are back from our interview with Gio. Thank you, Gio, for coming on. That was a great deep dive into LAFC. I had some thoughts on that I am just blank on right now. But
Steve Cherundolo, Bob Bradley.
Yes.
What are your thoughts, Jordan? What do you think? Because I know you and I texted after.
Well, Steve played under Bob, so this is interesting.
Yeah, but what are you really thinking, Jordan? Like, how do you think this goes with Steve? Because I have my concerns. I have my concerns with the fact that this league is not a league that tends to take very kindly to first year coaches, players. Like it's a really tough transition. And I will say, while you can point to maybe the Las Vegas Lights being, not so important in the records, but they were like atrocious last season. I mean, to the point where it's glaringly bad how bad they were.
I think they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Look, my expectation is a playoff spot. I don't think you can ask for a deep playoff run for them for a first-year coach, though I do think that's probably LAFC fans' expectations. They're not going to back down from that. But for me, look, Cherundolo, like I said, so I remember him playing, okay? And I remember after he retired, he joined Hannover 96, which is my German team, as like an assistant or something for youth teams, and people were kind of high on him back then. I think they were high on him until that Las Vegas Lights record, really. And I don't think we can really throw the baby out the bathwater, I guess. I think Cherundolo probably does have he has deeper experience than just Las Vegas. Yeah. When you look at, okay, he's been part of the German system. He's familiar with football over in Europe. Like he understands the game more than just, okay, this is a college coach or whatever getting promoted or something. This is different. But it is going to be tough for him. But if what Gio is saying and the players are like if Vela is in a good mood, then I think that this could spell some good things, because They have a roster that really, if they just play simple tactics. Look, here's the thing about soccer. You don't have to go overboard with the tactics. If you just play simple tactics and you have the talent is most of the time going to succeed. I think it's when we try to fit systems with players that don't work, or when we try to fit things like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole that
Are you
ends
talking
up.
about Greg Berhalter, Jordan?
No, not even particularly. My point being that, when we try to do things that are making it more complicated, then it creates complications, right? And we don't know how he's going to play this, so he could overcomplicate it. That's the thing. But if he goes out there and just plays soccer, like if he just gets them to play the way LAFC played under Bob, and they just have better defense and better goalkeeper and better attackers now, like, and a deeper bench, that's really the thing. Getting like players like Tashuri Shradi and stuff like that is huge, because I feel like while LAFC always had a really good 11, they weren't very deep at times.
Right.
And now I feel like they're deep. So I do think they'll be okay with Steve Trundolo, and I guess that's what we'll have to see.
Yeah.
But it's one of those, it is a question mark. How will this go for Steve, and how will this go for LAFC? What they want to avoid is a situation that the Galaxy found themselves in, where they were successful. And let's remember, Galaxy had a much higher successful peak.
Yeah.
They had won 3 MLS Cups, if I remember, in a row. Maybe not in a row, but they were very close together, right? And then that was with the Robbie Keane, the Beckham, the Donovan era. Then, they fall apart. Then they go through some coaching changes. Then they're in that look, literally like the last 3 or 4 years, right, has been the Galaxy needing to win on decision day to get into the playoffs, and them not being able to do that.
Yeah.
And what you want for LAFC, okay, let's not have a repeat of last year. Let's immediately get back in the playoffs to get over this hump where we're able to make an impact. What you don't want is having the same sort of layout of Bob was the success. Then he has a down season and he leaves. And then they go through coaching changes. And then they continue to go through coaching changes, and they can't ever get back into the playoffs. They should be better than that. And I think they will be better than that. And I do think that they'll be fine. But it is a question mark. And again, how does does he need a hot start? If they go 0-4 Minnesota style this season, does the pressure mount where he loses some of the locker room, or he loses the fans, and then the pressure's on and the players start feeling the pressure, and maybe they're making mistakes? And that's the kind of thing you want to go out there and immediately win like 3 out of 4 and put all those doubts to rest.
Yeah. And like you said, they've got such a talented roster that if it's all clicking, it's going well. And like you said, if they're playing simple soccer and they're getting, attacking chances, their biggest thing is going to have to shore up the defense. But if they can do that, and I think they can with Tashuri Shradi coming in on the right-hand side, and you got Mamadou Fall, who is only, 19 years old and growing into a position, and you get guys back like Segura and healthy, this team could compete. And Maxime Crepeau, Jordan, is, like we always talk about Andre Blake, we talk about Matt Turner, we talk about Pedro. Maxime Crepeau is up there in the top 5 of goalkeepers in this league, and he is a stud in between the posts, great at shot stopping. So it's going to be interesting, because I do think they have shored up, and he's going to get some points. I think he's going to make up some of these points that I think they would normally lose when they had guys like Pablo Cisniega. I think you've got a good mix. I think you've got a really good young talent, and a lot of these players, I mean, they've got a pretty young roster, unlike the Galaxy, where it was kind of like they just seem to be collecting older players that have just not panned out. I think that LAFC's expectations, Jordan, have always been like Atlanta's, extremely good, because they've been extremely good at the peak of their, or right at the beginning of their, run in MLS. And they haven't had tough years like, Cincinnati and, some of these other teams that have kind of poked their ways through. So Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm interested to see what Steve does. I'm interested to see if they can get in the attacking third and finish all these chances with how many prolific goal scorers they could have, and if they can defend and kind of tighten up the midfield, because it is going to be a huge loss not having Eduardo Atuesta.
And what I will say for all the LAFC fans out there, I'm rooting for Steve Cherundolo.
Yeah.
He was one of my favorites watching the U.S. men's national team. He's the reason why I like Hanover 96. Him and, DeMarcus Beasley played there for a bit, and Cherundolo then, joined the coaching staff there. He's beloved there. And, so, I am rooting for him to succeed because he was one of my favorites to watch growing up, as old as that makes me feel. So next episode is Charlotte. And Ben Wright, who covers Nashville, posted this on Twitter today. So they played a game together, Nashville and Charlotte. Nashville beat them 3-1 in a preseason win. Walker Zimmerman, coming from the U.S. men's national team qualifying, comes in, and so Nashville beat them 3-1. And he says, I know you guys didn't get a stream of the game, but Charlotte really didn't create much at all. When they had possession, it was mostly in their own half. So kind of concerns that we had for Charlotte, and that we'll probably discuss in the next episode as we look ahead to, this newest team coming in MLS. Are they prepared? Are they ready? Maybe from the sounds of it, not. We'll see. If any Charlotte fans are listening before this episode, before we record that episode, give us your thoughts on, are you worried about the start of the season? Are you guys prepared as it takes, kicks off in like 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks or so? So let us know. But you can follow us on Twitter at Stateside Show, Instagram at Stateside Show, Facebook.com/Stateside Show, or email us statesideshow@gmail.com. And let's not forget, Logan, that you had next year 77 points, LAFC winning the Supporter Shield. I have that written down in our notes from one of the episodes we had done mid-season or near the end of the season.
Yeah.
So
what a move that was, huh?
So we'll see. You that was before Bob left and everything, I think. So we'll really see how that prediction pans out. But I'm really glad I wrote that down. Or maybe that was me. I don't know. I think.
No, that was definitely me. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say you also I also wrote down. You also said 77 points for the Union. So I'm not sure.
Right.
I'm not sure which is which. But
both. I said both.
You both. Okay, but we were tied, and then LAFC wins the Supporter Shield on. Okay.
Right, on default.
Got it.
Yeah, there's a lot to. We'll go over it next episode.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and have a great rest of your week.
Steve Cherundolo better hope that the lights work better in LA than they do in Las Vegas.
It's awful. I can't make a shirt of that one.